Let's talk about banking in Singapore. It's become a lot more difficult for the average Joe to bank in Singapore in recent years because, like so many high-level jurisdictions, banks in Singapore have become disinterested with people with small deposits. But if you have a mid-six-figure sum to deposit, I'm going to walk you through the big three Singaporean banks in this video. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson, and if you're a 6 or 7 or 8-figure entrepreneur and you want to know how to legally open offshore bank accounts for yourself and for your businesses, reduce your taxes overseas, and just go where you're treated best, go to nomadcapitalist.com and learn more about what it is that we do. And in this video, I'm going to talk about banking in Singapore. Now, a number of years ago, many years ago, went to Singapore. And I went to one of the big banks, and I walked in, and I said, hey, I'd like to open a savings account. And they said, why? And I said, I just want to park some money. Why not? And they said, all right, go over there. And within about an hour, I was a U.S. citizen at the time, so it took a little bit longer, I had my shiny new account. And they said, okay, now you need to deposit 1,000 Singapore dollars. At the time, the Singapore dollar was about 79 cents, so I had to take out 790 U.S. dollars. That was my base currency. And so here's how I funded my account. I literally went over to the ATM, I stuck my card in, and at the time, it was relatively early on in my days of opening bank accounts. And so I just used a US card, I used a US debit card, and took out the $500 maximum that most US banks allow. And I said, here's this amount of money. It's like 700 Singapore dollars or whatever. I said, I'll come back tomorrow with the rest. Is that okay? They said, sure. I came back the next day, went back to the ATM, took the remaining money out, put it in there, all was good. Now I've gone on to use that account, and the number is bigger than $1,000 now, but I've been able to keep that account. However, you can no longer get that account for $1,000 if you are a non-resident. There are a couple banks in Singapore that will let you in the mid 5 figures. Obviously, their numbers are going to be based in Singapore dollars, so you can adjust that a little bit downwards if you're in US dollars, euros, what have you. But for most folks, the banks that you're going to want to focus on are the big three Singaporean banks. You could possibly work with a multinational bank, like a Citibank or, God forbid, HSBC. I don't know why. But you're not going to have a lot of success with the other international banks, like from a certain country. And we've talked about this in another video where I said, why certain banks offshore don't want to deal with you. So, the Australian banks, the Japanese banks, the Middle Eastern banks, they're generally not going to want to talk to you. The big three Singaporean banks are potentially interesting for folks. But what they do require is anywhere from about $200,000 to $350,000 minimum deposit. And there are three big Singaporean banks: OCBC, the Overseas Chinese Banking Company, DBS, Development Bank of Singapore, and UOB, United Overseas Bank. These are the big three. And so we're talking, again, minimum multi-six figures to get in. That money could be cash. It could eventually be investment money through things like mutual funds, unit trusts, REITs, whatever. But that's the amount that they need you to maintain in the account, or else they're going to boot you out. It's simply not worth their while in such a high-level jurisdiction to help you. So I've dealt with all three of these. OCBC, I've had a very good relationship with very nice people. The challenge with OCBC is in the back office, it's kind of a mess, in honesty. OCBC, kind of like HSBC, but not to nearly the extent, has gone through some de-risking. I feel like it's more difficult. I went in and tried to upgrade to the next level of my account, and I get, so many questions. Now, when you go offshore, banks are going to ask you questions, and especially at a higher level. They're going to want to know, what kind of business are you in? But in this case, we're talking about going back 15 years to my very early days of business. And eventually they said, you can stay at this level. We're just going to keep you at this level. That's okay. So they become rather strict. UOB is relatively friendly to deal with. We've got some good context there. They're very nice. They're a little slow sometimes. But again, back office, it seems like while they're very friendly and eager to deal with people, they're very particular about certain things. That's true with a lot of Asian banks. Like, is your signature exactly to the millimeter the way that you signed it the first time on the signature card? If you can't replicate that again, you're screwed. UOB is friendly. They seem willing to take people. They're not really, obviously all these Singaporean banks are strict. If you're If you're doing anything shady, you're out. But if you're just a normal person, you can explain what you're doing. I found UOB is relatively good, but a little bit slow and a little bit bureaucratic. DBS has been one of the better ones. DBS has what's called the Treasures program, and they've all got different levels. So if you want to get into the basic level, that's just the basic service. If you want more investment advice, more hands-on service, that might get into the low seven-figure level with most of them. And you get varying levels of service. The actual service isn't much better as you go up, but if you're looking for investment advice or investment recommendations or professional help, that's generally where it comes in. DBS has probably been one of the better ones to deal with. In my experience. And so I don't want to go into great details with these banks. Obviously, I have good relationships with all of them. I'd like to maintain those relationships, and they don't want all their practices necessarily aired on YouTube. But I found that DBS is perhaps among the most responsive. Now, is banking in Singapore the panacea for everyone? Not necessarily. If you're looking at keeping that amount in one bank, that's fine. A lot of people that I talk to who are entrepreneurs, even at the the higher levels, they don't like to keep that much money in the bank. Now, the fact that you can keep some of that in investments, and there's a wide portfolio of investments, can be a good thing. But a lot of times, I think that priority banking, which is what we're talking about here in Singapore, priority banking in other countries where the minimum is lower, may suit you better. Because what I can tell you, while those are my impressions on those three banks as a whole, I don't know that priority banking service in Singapore is necessarily that much better than other markets. It is likely better than a lot of the European markets, like some of the UK territories or crown dependencies where we've not gotten such great reviews, Isle of Man and Jersey and those. Probably better than some other European markets. But if you're expecting some whiz-bang amazing service, and that's what you think you're going to be treated like a king or a queen because you're depositing $250,000 US, you will be mistaken. That's kind of the hidden secret of priority banking. Is in some cases you do priority banking because that's all you can do. And so if you want access to Singapore, that's what you do. You're going to be depositing six figures if you don't live there because, again, they have plenty of money. They don't really need your money. They don't need someone with $671 rolling around in their account. It's just not worth the compliance and the due diligence and all the hassles. They have plenty of money. These are some of the strongest banks in the world, according to all the reports. So Singapore may not be the place for you. If you are interested in banking in Singapore, those are the big three banks that you're likely to deal with. The requirements are mid-six figures, and those are my thoughts on each of them. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.